Hey everybody, this is BrettFish and welcome to another episode of Out of the Fishbowl. I am super glad that you have chosen to listen, so thank you for your time. And I'm really excited about this episode. So I want to dive right in, and we're going to start with three quotes. And each of these quotes, feel free to pause the episode after the quote and just go and wander in the woods for maybe a couple of years and just think about the quote, because these quotes I hope are going to form a framework for the rest of this conversation. But each one is so rich, and yeah, I think there's just so much in these. So let's dive right in. The first quote is by Paulo Coelho, and it says this: "The world is changed by your example, not by your opinion." So just take a moment just to think about that for a while, and seriously, literally pause the thing, maybe sit with that quote. The world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. It doesn't matter so much what you think. What really matters, what the world really takes notice of, is how you live your life, how you show up, how you are with other people. So that is quote number one. The second one is by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it goes like this: "The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep, loving concern." Beautiful people do not just happen. I love that last line. Beautiful people do not just happen. They have an appreciation, a sensitivity, an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep, loving concern. And so last week in the last episode, I was looking at "this too shall pass." Like what do you say to people that are living in the depths of despair, where things feel overwhelming? And what this quote speaks to is that it's in those spaces, and it's in clawing your way out, or making it out, or being pulled out of those spaces, that you start to have that appreciation and that compassion and that resonance. And so don't despair if that's where you are right now. There are possibilities and opportunities ahead. And then this third quote, it was from Reddit or something, and the only reference I've got to where it came from, it's under heading Headspace Hotel, or the person connected is Modern Wild. So I couldn't find an actual person's name. But it goes like this: "The theme that always resonates me the most in stories is the world is cruel, therefore I won't be. The world is cruel, therefore I won't be." I absolutely love that. Imagine if our leaders could grasp that. Imagine if the people who ran countries, the world is cruel, therefore I won't be. Imagine if the people in your classroom, in your business, in your church, in your neighborhood started living with that mantra: the world is cruel, therefore I won't be. And how do we change that I to a we? As we start living it out, the next person goes, "Oh, I'll do that as well. The world is cruel," and it becomes, "therefore we won't be." And so three quotes to get us started off, to get us thinking. And the focus of this episode is about standing in front of your mirror, maybe at the end of the day or at the beginning of the next day, and looking at that person there and choosing that tomorrow, if it's the night before, tomorrow I want to be a better version of BrettFish Anderson than I was today. That's speaking to me. You don't have to be a better version of BrettFish Anderson. But I want to be a better version of myself than I was today. And if it's the morning as you start your new day, how can I be a better version of myself than I was yesterday? And it's not talking about total transformation. It's talking about one thing, one habit that you need to stop doing, one way that you can be more loving, one conversation that you need to have, one thing that you've been putting off that you stop putting off. And if I do those gradually, every time I look in the mirror, go, how can I be a better version of the person I used to be? Then in 20 years' time, that person that is standing in front of the mirror is going to be revolutionized. Think about it if you don't do that. Think about it if you just go through the motions. Every day you wake up and you just live the way you lived before. And in 20 years' time, the person looking in the mirror sees the person from 20 years ago, and nothing much has changed. How depressing is that? But if I do small changes and small things and work on reading and listening and building and all the things we're going to be speaking on in a moment, if I start doing those things regularly, just at the end of each day, what's one more thing that I can do to beat myself? And it's a realization that I am the competition, that I'm not competing with anyone else. I'm not comparing myself with anyone else. I'm not trying to be that person. I can learn from other people. I can see things I like and want to emulate them. But at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day, when I look in the mirror, that is my competition. I want to be a better version of that person than I was yesterday. And over time, the world will be transformed. And we're going to look at that a little deeper in an episode called 5 Questions for Your Mirror. So before we dive into this episode, I was thinking about it, and probably more than any other, this particular theme resonates with everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you think or believe. This idea of standing in front of the mirror and going, how can I be a better version of myself? Obviously, we all define better in different ways. But surely we have to hope that there are no people out there standing in front of the mirror going, how can I be worse than I was yesterday? It does sometimes seem like that is the case. But I just want to encourage you, as you're listening to this, and maybe even right now, you want to pause this and send it off. Who comes to mind that you think this will be an amazing conversation for? I'd really love my work colleague to engage with this. I'd love my pastor to hear this. I'd love my friends to hear this, my sister, or whoever it is. And make sure that you pass it on to them and say, hey, listen to this. I think this will be good for you. And maybe listen to it with a group of people and have a conversation around a meal. We're going to be looking at 5 different L words, and different ones will resonate with different people. And so this will be a great conversation starter. And so I really want to encourage you, if you like it, if you find it challenging, if you find it helpful, please take the time to pass it on, to tell someone about it. I'd love to see this landing in more ears. And so as we look at 5 questions for your mirror, what would you say to the person who wants to be a better version of themselves? I think it's important to touch on this idea of reflection and accountability. So reflection is looking and seeing something and either deciding to keep it going or deciding there needs to be a change. And that's something in the busyness of life we can lose track of. And that's why often New Year's is such a great time to just pause and reflect, and what changes will we put, whether in the form of New Year's resolutions or commitments or life changes or signing up for gym memberships or a new language acquisition, whatever it is. But that sense of taking and making moments to reflect, to look at how things are and see how can we improve them. And then the second one is this thing of accountability, because all of us have blind spots, things that are real in our lives that we don't notice or we don't think are as negative or harmful or extreme as they are. And so the question becomes, who's invited into your life to be accountability for you? Do you have friends where you've said, you can challenge me on things? If you see me stepping out of line, if you see me saying things, if you see me posting on social media, and I have a number of those people that will message me privately and say, hey, that was a bit too much. And I've deleted posts before. I've changed posts. Sometimes I haven't. But that question of who can give you accountability? If we operate by ourselves, we're going to lose track of our vision and values at some time, because the world shouts loud. It's easy to get caught up in our own ego or fame or sense of importance or whatever it is. And so invite accountability. And I find it works best if you give people permission. You say to someone, hey, please check me on this. And maybe you give them a theme, relationally, or in my work ethic space, or in the language I use, or my attitude towards my parents. Please, if you see anything out of order, please call me on it. And that calling can be done in love, speaking the truth in love. And the second question is about defensiveness. If somebody challenges me or tries to hold me accountable, then defensiveness for some people, maybe most people, is the natural reaction. Like, no, oh, not me, or how could you, or how dare you, or anything like that. And so how do we not be defensive? And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking what often happens with me, or it used to happen, I can't remember it happening recently, but it used to happen quite a lot, is somebody would say something to me, and in the moment I'd respond. I'd respond defensively, or I'd defend, or I'd push back, or whatever. And then I'd go back and I'd be thinking about that thing later. And so my initial response is not the end of the conversation. And that happens a lot, even with things I strongly believe in, but especially when someone's pushed back on me. And then a day or two later, I'm thinking about it and I'm going, oh, no, wait, that person was right. And then most times, hopefully all times, I'll go back to them and say, hey, I just responded in the moment. I've been thinking about what you said and it was right. And I've changed my mind. I've made different decisions. I've gone down different paths. I've had to go and apologize. But that initial defensiveness, I think, is naturally there. And so do you just let it be there, or do you challenge it later when you're by yourself? When I look in the mirror at the end of the night, I go, oh, I was quite defensive there. What's really going on there? Do I believe what I believe, or do I need to change my belief? And what I find is when people challenge us or hold us accountable, and that can be done in both positive and negative ways, there are two things that happen. There's an opportunity for change if I see that I'm wrong and I go, oh, I've believed this wrong, let me think differently. I've done this wrong, let me do it differently. Or it strengthens what I'm doing. I listen to the critique, I go and do some research. I chat to friends about it and think about it. And then I go, no, actually, I do believe what I believe. And my belief becomes stronger because it's been challenged and it's been thought about and reflected on. So those are some of the frameworks as we go into these 5 questions: the importance of reflection and accountability, the blind spots, who gets invited to come and interrogate and lovingly correct or just be curious about our decisions or how we do things, and then how do we deal with defensiveness. So I've got 5 different words that all happen to begin with L, which will hopefully help us remember them, or at least remember a couple of them. And each one is connected to a quote that I found that I really loved. So number 1, absurd times call for absurd amounts of love, by Brad Montague. Absurd times call for absurd amounts of love. We are living in absurd times. And by the time you are listening to this podcast, it will probably be a month or 2 from when I'm recording it. And so you will probably be listening to it in a bunker on a field or on a raft in the middle of the ocean or something like that, because we are living in absurd times. Donald T. Rump is in his 3rd week of running things in America, and things are chaotic. Today he was picking fights with Canada and Mexico and some third country, China. And so who knows what will have happened over the next 2 months. South Africa is chaotic. There are war situations in all these different places. We remember what's going on in Palestine, Israel, and the Congo and Sudan, and absurd times when we can feel overwhelmed, we can feel like it's too much, call for absurd amounts of love. So point number 1, or question number 1 for me to ask my mirror, and this is the most important question every night. I stand in front of my mirror. Am I loving? Am I loving? As a follower of Jesus, the greatest command for me is to love God with all my heart, soul, strength, and mind, and to love my neighbor as myself. And then it goes on further to say, when people are hungry, feed them. When people are thirsty, give them something to drink. When people are lonely, go visit them. When they're sick, go and look after them. And so it talks about the marginalized, those that are struggling, like look out for them. Love your enemy is part of it. But even just as a human being, as a person, am I loving? That feels like the best value to have in life. And so that's the question I will ask my mirror. If I look back on my day, my interactions with people that are at the side of traffic lights, somebody that comes to my door asking for money, somebody that cuts me off in the traffic, a colleague who did something to me that really hurt, a family member that said something to me, am I loving? And love doesn't have to always be kind of calm and collected. Love can sometimes involve us throwing over tables or getting really getting intense and passionate. And so it's not this passive thing, but and we all know what love is. And there's an amazing episode on love. All You Need Is Love, which is one of the most popular episodes on this podcast, actually, after the pineapple on pizza one. So go check it out if you haven't. But that feels like an amazing starting point. And if you are feeling overwhelmed by the state of the world, then find a way to look inwards and to reach into love. And like, how can I make this world better for somebody else who is probably also feeling overwhelmed? Absurd times call for absurd amounts of love. The second question, and the quote goes like this, and I love this. This is a funny quote. The picture is of a guy dressed in a bunny suit standing on the edge of a pier, and it says, "Sometimes my age is very inappropriate for my behavior." And people that know me will know that is true of me. I dress up in bunny suits and meet people at the airport and do weird and crazy things. But the second question I have for myself, and these aren't necessarily in order. Love definitely goes first. Maybe this should have been a bit further down the list. Am I living? And I've got an episode called the existential question. Am I just existing? Am I just making it through? Am I just surviving? And when the world is absurd and overwhelming, it can feel like survival mode is what is necessary. And when you're going through hard times, divorce, loss of someone, it can feel like maybe for this season, I just need to make it. I just need to survive. I just need to get through it. But in the bigger picture of life, there comes a time when you've got some choices and you've got some opportunities, and it's like, am I living in those moments? Am I seizing the day? Am I taking opportunities? Am I trying things I've never tried before? Am I really sucking the marrow out of life, like really living? Because it's easy to fall into existing. I think parents with young kids will know all about this. I look at my friends with their children, and it's like, in those seasons of life, maybe all you can do is get through the day and just try and have the house semi-clean for the chaos that's going to emerge tomorrow. And there's different seasons of life when things like that come up, work seasons, study seasons, all that kind of thing. But there will be a time again where I can choose to live. Am I trying new foods? Am I learning a new skill? Am I doing a new hobby? Am I taking the path less traveled, going on a road I've never been before, putting myself outside of my comfort zone? Am I living? And so I think that's such an important question to stand and ask your mirror every night. And maybe every night you take one of these questions and you link Monday night is the first one, Tuesday night is the second. You don't ask all five, but every day you ask one of these questions. How did I live today? How am I living this week? Or what have I got planned for the rest of the week that takes me from existing and surviving into living? And then the third one, I love this quote. Very short, very simple. The first duty of love is to listen. And it's by a guy called Paul Tillich. The first duty of love is to listen. Question number 3, am I listening? And again, we go back to the fact that we're living in absurd times. People are struggling. People are overwhelmed. Yesterday, my friend Brad and I were walking through a park, and a man came and approached us, a Zimbabwean man, and he had this hectic story, and we had nothing to give him, and it felt we both left feeling really bad. But we were able to at least listen to his story, where a lot of people, I think, would have brushed him off, and just ask him his name and hear his story and just take a moment just to connect our humanities together. And I still feel bad about that because we didn't help him. But every day there's opportunities to listen to people where it matters. If somebody reaches out to you in a text, if somebody is going through a rough time, do I sit alongside them and go, hey, can I hear your story? What's going on? Would you like to share it with me? Would you like to tell me? Maybe it's about messaging a friend you haven't heard from for a long time, or somebody you know that's gone through a rough time. Because what happens if you lose a child, if you go through a divorce, if somebody dies, everybody shows up, or a lot of people show up for a week or 2 weeks, and then gradually their lives continue, and so they kind of fade back into life. And it's not because they're being horrible or mean or anything like that or malicious, but their lives continue. And the thing that is center stage for you, the most important thing, isn't that meaningful to them. It isn't impacting them in the same way. And so people tend to disappear. And so one way that we can answer that question, am I listening, is thinking about somebody maybe that went through something a month ago or a year ago and just checking in with them. Hey, how's it going? What's happening? Do you want to catch a coffee? Can we go for a walk on the green belt? Because listening is definitely the first duty of love. If I can sit with somebody and just listen to them, I don't need to solve it. I don't need to give advice. I don't need to fix things. Let me just show you that I'm here, that I care, that I see the image of God that you were created in, that you matter, that your story matters, that what you're going through now matters. Am I listening? So we've got, am I loving? Am I living? Am I listening? You can see how some of these connect with each other. The loving and the listening are fully intertwined. And we move on to question 4, which is, the quote is, the aim of argument or of discussion should not be victory, but progress. Now think about that. When you're in an argument, you're in a discussion, most of the time we're wanting to win. We want people to think what we think. We want people to know that we know the truth, that we've done the research, that they just need to believe what we believe. But it says the aim of argument or of discussion should not be victory, but progress. If we have a discussion or an argument, even if I'm arguing with somebody that thinks the absolute opposite of me, is there truth in here for me to learn? Even if it's just understanding them a little bit better. Why do you think that? Why do you believe in that? Like, it feels so wrong to me. It feels so ridiculous. But tell me why. Why do you think the DA is a good party worth following? Why are you supporting Israel? Those are things I can't maybe get my head around, but let me listen to it. I've got a friend, Carl, who is part of my church, and he's actually an MP in the DA. And we had dinner together, or lunch together, because I spoke about it. And I'm very often very anti-DA or very loud against the DA. And so we just sat together so I could try and listen to him and try and understand why are you in that space? Why are you working for them? What is it in there? Because I know Carl, and I love Carl, and I think there's greatness in him. And so I'm confused as to why he's there. And so I can sit and listen, and hopefully there's learning and progress. And I think there was progress in our conversation. I don't suddenly think the DA is all amazing or anything like that. And I don't but I was able to hear some of his reasoning and some of his thinking, and hopefully there's a bit of progression. When I'm arguing with people, am I open to being wrong? Am I open to the fact that this thing I believe so strongly, there always has to be a sense that I could be wrong. And so I always need to be listening and wondering. And again, I spoke about it before. Like, if the argument goes well, the discussion goes well, it might back up what I already believed, and I understand a little bit more about why I believe it. Or it might be something that changes my mind and shows me that I need to go another route. I actually messaged a friend of mine, Taryn Williams, just before I started recording, to ask his permission for the story. And I'm going to give you a very summation version of it. But he was at a place where, or he was at a church where he believed one thing theologically, and he believed it for about 20 years in terms of women in leadership, women preaching, things like that. And he actually went to write a paper to prove to everyone why that thinking was correct. And as he was doing the research, as he was doing the study, as he was checking it out, he came to the realization for himself that he'd got it wrong, that actually there was a different story. And so he changed his mind on it. He actually wrote a book on it. How God Sees Women, I think is the title. And his trajectory, because he's now working at a different church, like the whole trajectory of his life changed because he was open to the possibility of something that he held on to so strongly for so long being wrong. And so when facts presented themselves, there was the sense of, oh, okay. And that defensiveness wasn't there. And maybe there's stories of accountability and reflection that are part of that as well. And I'm sure his wife, Julie, would have been on the journey as well. So he's not doing it alone. He's doing it in community. And everything changed because he was open to that. Am I learning, or am I just firmly standing firm on the things I believe? I believe this and it's true. And if other people think differently, they must be wrong. Or am I going, well, let me learn. Let me read some more. So when I'm trying to understand Palestine, Israel more, I go and read some books. I've read 6 books, I think, in the last year, just trying to understand different aspects of it. I'm watching videos, I'm listening to testimonies, I'm trying to understand people. I want to know so that I can have a more educated opinion on it and also learn where I might be wrong. As I'm learning about race in South Africa, I'm reading books by Black South Africans, by other South Africans with different lived experiences of my own. I'm reading books from other Africans to try and understand something that was not my upbringing in terms of my understanding and learning. And so that question, standing in front of the mirror, am I learning, is so vital because I want to know more. I want to know the things I know better. I want to be able to argue or explain or engage with people on them better. And so it's better that I know them better, that I'm learning, that I'm not just holding firm to things. And critical thinking, which gets a bit of a bad rap from people who I think don't know what it means. But it's really just this idea of asking better questions. What are the questions behind what's happening? We see symptoms. What is causing those? What are the roots? What are the effects? And so when we start to ask better questions, that starts to enhance our learning. And I'm so fortunate that I have people around the world, but so many people in Cape Town, South Africa, who ask such good questions and teach me to ask better questions, to see better answers. And we start to realize how the world is shaped and how it's actually running and who it's running for and who it's not running for. We start to understand who is missing at the table, whose voice is not being heard, who is having decisions made for them instead of making decisions. And so learning is vital. We've got to be thinking critically. We've got to be examining, why do we do what we do? Why do we think what we do? Why do we spend the money we spend on? Why do we live where we live? Why do we engage with people in the way we do that? We've got to keep asking questions because then we will become better versions of ourselves, more educated, more understanding, hopefully more compassionate and more passionate. Am I loving? Am I living? Am I listening? Am I learning? And question number 5 that I just realized I don't have a quote for says, am I letting go? And it's this idea of things that have happened, maybe with people or situations in the past. I've spoken freely about my divorce 3 years ago, and it was good for me to sit in grief, as I spoke about in the last episode, to really lean into the grief, into the confusion, into the pain and all of that. But if I hold on to that for the rest of my life, in less than 2 months' time, I'm getting married to Amanda. And if I sit holding on to all of that divorce stuff, that's not going to be good for our relationship. And so I need to let go and I need to move on. Our history is really good for informing us, but it's not a great place for us to live. It's a good place for us to go, oh, that's why I did this, or that's why I think this, or that helped form me and shape me. It's so important that we understand and know our history, but it's a terrible place to live. We need to be living presently and living for the future, thinking of those that will come after us. Like, what are we doing in the world that is going to make the world a better place for those that follow? What are we doing in the world now that makes it better for everyone that lives in it now? And so, am I letting go? Are there things that are holding me back? And these will usually be negative things, I think, like anger or bitterness or revenge or resentment or things somebody said to us or said about us or things like that. And if we can let go, so it means you've dealt with it. It's not about avoiding it or pretending it didn't happen or just can't we just move on from here? It's about dealing with the stuff, but realizing that the present into the future is where we need to be, that holding on to history, living in history is not going to move us anywhere. And so there are certain things that we need to let go. And I think this especially resonates where people have heard us, and especially real and present to me at the moment in the last 2 years, 2 friendships in particular. I think of a family member of somebody that was just hurt me. and did things that hurt me or didn't do things that hurt me. And so I can hold on to that. They definitely hurt, and I definitely need to experience that pain and grief. But there comes a moment where I need to let it go, because otherwise it's going to affect every present friendship. It's going to affect my relationships. It's going to affect my attitude. It's going to affect the way I think about how are these friends going to treat me. And instead, I need to lean into love and trust and hope and celebrate the friends that are being amazing friends around me. And so when you stand at the mirror, whether it's at the end of the day brushing your teeth or in the morning as you get ready to prepare for the day, ask yourself one or all of those questions. Am I loving? Am I living? Am I living? Am I really living? Am I listening? Am I learning? Am I letting go? And maybe you come up with some of your own questions, and maybe they don't have to start with an L. But I think this whole thing of standing there and being present, but also being decisive and being intentional about saying, I want to be a better version of that guy. I love that guy. I love BrettFish. BrettFish, there's so many things about him that I love about him, but there's some things that could be better. There's some things that need to be added. There's some things that need to be taken away. There's some edges that need to be just shaped a little bit, smoothed down a little bit. And there's some edges that maybe need to be made a bit more rough. But every day I want to be a better version of that guy. And in doing that, hopefully I start to make the world around me a better version of the world it's been before. I want to end with a quote that I found by Alessandro Biaggi. And I found it because it's sticking on the wall of my man cave. As I was looking around my man cave, there's a poster someone gave to me that says, never lose your sense of wonder. And these are all messages that are helping me become a better person than I was yesterday. Because when I sit here and I see that poster, I get reminded, I need to never lose my sense of wonder. There's a picture from one of my nieces that says, I love you, Brett, you are so funny. And that just reminds me of relationship and of connection, and that a little girl out there thinks I'm funny, and that's good. There's a quote that says, for to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others, Nelson Mandela. Another one says, justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are, Benjamin Franklin. These are messages that I see. They're literally in my face. People gave them to me. My sister-in-law gave me a whole bunch of quotes that I'm reading, and they are daily reminders that speak to me. Am I doing that thing? Am I believing that thing? Am I working to that thing? But the last quote that is sitting on this wall says this, Alessandro Biaggi, and may the appalling hate of others fuel you to step more deeply into your work as a warrior of love, justice, and freedom in the fight against oppression and bigotry. May the appalling hate of others, may the hatred of others fuel you. May it fuel me to step more deeply into my work as a warrior of love, justice, and freedom in the fight against oppression and bigotry. That is a statement that I can have in my mirror. That is a statement that I can use to lead me every day as I'm asking questions about loving and living and listening and learning and letting go. And I want to encourage you tonight, when you stand in front of the mirror, just pause and take some time and ask those questions. And I hope that this has inspired you and encouraged you and given you some tools, because once we start asking those questions, they give us some work to do. They give us some possibilities. They give us some conversations with people. They give us some invitations we can send out, some connections we can make. And so I want to encourage you again that if this has been meaningful to you, please share it with somebody else. Who is the person that you can tag or send the link to and say, hey, listen to this now. This relates to you. This may help you be a better version of yourself tomorrow than you are right now, which is a version that I already think is pretty cool. Thanks for listening. Let's stand in front of the mirror and then let's action the things we talk about. I am BrettFish, and this has been Out of the Fishbowl.